Hello there, and welcome to Tales of the Force, a place for fans to tell their Star Wars stories. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and this is the last episode for this month that is specifically highlighting people's stories in the fandom that also wanted to share about their mental health journey. Because of this added personal component, this episode today will also be a little bit longer than the normal episode time. Joining me today is Brandon. Brandon is a teacher, podcaster, and mental health advocate who uses Star Wars as a platform to connect with and inspire others to find meaning through stories. Through his classroom and the Clashing Sabers podcast network, Brandon explores the themes and ideas of the saga through a variety of lenses and perspectives. In doing so, he hopes to show people that Star Wars can be for them and what it has been for him: hope, truth, and a light in the darkness. Don't forget, this is Brandon's personal story. It is not my place on the show to dismiss, diminish, judge, or have an opinion on his story. Any views, thoughts, or opinions expressed are his own. Any comments are expected to be respectful. This episode does come with a little bit of a content warning. This is simply to empower you, our listeners, with the knowledge you need to make healthy decisions about how or if you should consume this podcast or YouTube channel content. In this story, there are mentions of depression, eating disorders, suicide, self-harm, and loss. Not all episodes are for everyone. If you feel like this episode will be upsetting for you or offend you in any way, please do not continue. As always, please take care of yourself and reach out to someone you trust if needed. I also want to point out that I, the host, and our guest, we're not trying to provide any medical or professional advice on the YouTube channel or podcast. Anything said should not be taken as a replacement for medical, clinical, professional advice, diagnosis, or medical intervention. With all of that out of the way, please join me in welcoming Brandon to Tales of the Force. Hey, Brandon, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's just, another day in the life, just
Exactly.
clicking away. I feel
Living the dream.
I feel like I had a list of things today to do that were, I don't know, those things that take time that nobody really wants to do. And I had a bunch of that to do today, but I got most of it done, and there's still time to do more after this,
And then more will come on the list after that. So
yes, it's a never-ending list of adulting.
Yeah.
It's so
great.
fun.
I know. Aren't you glad our parents signed us up for this?
Right? Oh, goodness. It's just, I do kind of like having days where I have a bunch of that stuff back to back, and then I can kind of knock it out for the rest of the week and not worry about it, because I think my personality and my brain, how it works, if I have that stuff scattered throughout the week, it's kind of all I can think about, like, especially if it's appointments.
I feel that.
And then it's hard for me to get other things done while I'm waiting for the time that I have to do something else. It's like my brain is constantly thinking about this thing I have to go to today. So it's like my day doesn't start until that almost.
Yes.
And so,
I feel that so much. I'm like, I have a thing to do at 2:00 today, so my day is planned. What are you doing the rest of the day?
Here until I need to leave, and then I decide, I can do a couple of things, and then you're like, oh man, I should have left 10 minutes ago. And
I'm going on a trip this week. I have backwards planned my schedule for an entire day based on where I need to be at 2:00. So I completely feel what you're talking about.
Yeah. I need to use, I think, like reminders and alarms on my phone more for different things.
I have learned so much about like object permanence over the last couple of years, and how, we'll get into this, but like with ADHD, you don't
Yeah.
You have time blindness and object
Yep.
permanence. So I literally like I have notes everywhere. I have alarms for everything on my watch. Like I thought it was like maybe I'll get into like watches again and get rid of my Apple Watch. And I was like, I literally wouldn't survive. I wouldn't get anywhere on time because
Yes.
we
Yes.
would not be ready.
Oh my gosh, if I could tell you the amount of like planners that have gone to die in the trash because I have not used them. And now I even have bought like some ADHD friendly ones and I
Yeah.
still don't use them.
My week always starts nicely in my planners, and then it's just word vomit everywhere. And I'm like,
Yes.
now I'm too overwhelmed, so I have to move it to Post-its. Yeah, I feel you.
Yes. I got one that's not like dated. So thankfully at least if I use it a little bit this year and then
Yeah.
I get to next year and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to use this again, at least I can use it again. It's not like it's completely wasted because it was dated for 2024.
You know what my mental trick is? I buy stickers off of Redbubble because they're like nicer stickers. And I put them on there, so then I feel bad for my stickers if I don't use the planner. I don't know why that's my brain hack, but if I put my stickers on something, then I want to use it. So
like I have to use this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's disrespectful to the stickers.
Yes. I think everybody kind of has to find their little, like you said, brain hack for those things. And I just don't think I've found mine yet. So I'm still working on it. Eventually, hopefully one day I'll find it as far as planning and time because I'm trying and it really sucks. It's so hard. Oh, it's, it's hard, but I guess it's a part of life. So it's all good. Well, first, after all that word vomit of my day and us and our planning things, but hey, maybe the sticker thing will help somebody else. Maybe somebody else will be like, oh, that sounds great. I mean, I can try it. We'll see. Maybe. Yeah. I did have a water bottle I used a lot that has stickers on it. And I did really like that water bottle. So
see,
who knows? I can try it. Maybe
maybe
it'll work. I don't know. But I guess after all of that, I want to first thank you for coming on because I know that sharing stories, especially when they're personal, can be difficult or a little overwhelming sometimes because it can be really vulnerable to share personally what's going on or how things have affected you. Even if it's something like Star Wars, it's still a really personal story. And then especially with us wrapping up May and Mental Health Awareness Month, that aspect of it adds a whole nother aspect of being vulnerable and, sharing stuff with
for sure
people you don't know. And so thank you for coming on and doing that
Well, I appreciate you creating this space where people can come and do that. I think it's really important. And I think, we kind of have our geek thing, but then we also have our mental health thing. And it's like we don't often let those things, meld into each other enough. And I think like a space like this where people can do that, it's been really beneficial for me. So I hope, in some way my story helps somebody else. But I just think it's really cool that we're creating these spaces where people can do that now. Like you're doing it. I'm seeing other people doing it. It's really, really awesome.
Well, thanks. Yeah. And I love it when I see other people doing it too. It's nice,
Yeah.
And I think of Ashley Eckstein has always done such a good job of talking about the stigma of mental health and, just how we should talk about it. And I think she's done so much good in that area. And
she's the best.
She is. She's awesome.
Yeah.
I hope I get to meet her at some point. She is coming to, I say small, and I don't mean it in a negative way, but we do have a Comic-Con for the state that I live in, and it's in the city that I grew up in, and she is coming to that. And so I'm planning on trying to go this fall to that and meeting her. And I feel like it'll be cool. I know we'll get into characters and stuff later, but for me, it'll kind of feel like almost like a full circle moment. Everything I've been through and how Star Wars has been for me and how Ahsoka has been such an important part of that journey. And getting to meet her in my hometown where I grew up will just be, I think, a really cool sentimental experience.
Yeah. I mean, regardless of where you meet her, it's going to be special. Like, like you said, we'll get into characters and how important Ahsoka is to me and stuff. But just when I got to meet her that one time, you take a photo with them, it's 10 seconds. But, just getting to say thank you, for what she's done for me. I told her, I said, you kind of helped save my life. And, you could just feel the genuineness. It wasn't like pushing you off or whatever.
Yeah.
And we had gotten a shirt for her that had our Clashing Sabers logo on it, and gave it to her and said, just said, this is for you, whatever. And even her husband, he's there with her at all the shoots or whatever. And he took the shirt and he goes, she really, really does appreciate it. And I said, I know. Yeah. And it was just really cool that, even after all of these years, after everything, the hundreds of stories, thousands of stories that she's heard, meeting people at these cons, that she still takes the time to make sure that like she cares. That's really cool.
Yeah. And she seems like I was able to go to a panel that she was at earlier this year, and it seems like she still views herself as a Star Wars fan. Yeah. And I genuinely think when she says Ahsoka lives in all of us, that she doesn't just see herself as Ahsoka. It's like she doesn't claim it as like, this is mine.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And so because she has that attitude, or it seems like she has that attitude about it, it seems like she genuinely just loves being around other people who are also Star Wars fans, and especially love Ahsoka like she does.
Yeah.
And it's like a, not that other people seem like above you as like a fan versus them being a part of a project. I'm not trying to come across that way, but like she just seems to be even extra humble, if that makes sense.
Yeah, she does.
Because the other actors and voice actors and different people are humble as well, but she just has like an extra, I don't know, just realness about her that I find so refreshing, and it's just wonderful to me. So
well, and she's accomplished so much. Like, it would be easy for her to have an air about her. It would be easy for her to, rest on her laurels, and she doesn't. And like, you mentioned her making Ahsoka for everybody. Like, that was part of, I had trouble getting into live action Ahsoka until I saw Ashley approve of it. And I didn't even realize that I, was having problems, because I like Rosario Dawson. I've liked her work in other things. Yeah. And that was really a moment when I saw the two of them together. I was like, okay, Ashley's good with this, so I can be good with this. It was kind of, if she can humble herself to be okay with, her not being Ahsoka, I can get over myself with her not being Ahsoka, kind of thing, but she does a lot for the community and the fandom. And she cares about the consequences of her actions, and so I think she takes very intentional steps to make sure that, she gets a result that is beneficial to everybody. And it really has been. I mean, you look at the female market, in products, like, was non-existent before her. And now, I mean, I say, like, women get all the cool stuff. The guys get the lazy, here's another Darth Vader t-shirt. And I'm like, I want that one, but made in a guy's shirt. Can I have that? So
I like that they're doing the R universe too. So it's more like gender neutral. So anybody can wear it, and that's fun too, because that stuff is really good as well. And I love that Rosario has come to this in such a humble place too, because and I think it's very genuine. I don't think it's like, I have to do this because the fans don't like me if I don't. I think she genuinely is also a Star Wars fan and like geeks out over it too. And so that's one of the other reasons I, if they use someone else, really love her casting, because she also seems like one of us, like she's just like such a Star Wars nerd. And anytime something happens, she just geeks out over it like any of us would as well. And she seems to have the most respect and utmost respect, even more than just for Ahsoka, for Ashley. And I love seeing them support each other. And that's something that doesn't happen a lot in the industry and just in life in general. You see a lot of pitting women against each other.
For
And
sure.
so to see them be so supportive of each other is just really cool.
Well, and I mean, I remember going to Celebration. We got to go to the Mandalorian panel, and I got this close to Rosario. I waited a little bit, and then I saw her walking to the edge of the stage. You know, it's after the panel's over, whatever. And I just looked at my friend, and I'm like, I'm going for it. And I jumped the little railing that was there and ran down. Missed her by that much, but they had to basically drag her off of the stage to stop shaking hands with fans and stuff like that. And like that was just really cool. Like she loves the character too. You know, she's working to take care of the character, and I think with Ahsoka, it's different than like a Luke Skywalker because your casual Star Wars fan likes Luke Skywalker, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a legacy there, but I feel like it's very different from the intimate relationship that, just in general terms, that the Ahsoka fans have with her, because following her story takes more time than following Luke's story. It happened in so many different mediums. It happened across such a long span of time that it just makes it different. It's not better, it's not worse, it's just different. And I think that they respect that legacy that comes with her, and the pressure, honestly, that comes with her. I mean, she has more or less, taken the mantle from Leia, especially after the loss of Carrie Fisher, as kind of the model character for female fandom in particular. I went to the Ahsoka cosplay meetup that they had, and it's just all these women with amazing costumes, and and you just realize, like the impact that this is she's had in that community. And so there's of course, men who love Ahsoka. I'm sitting right here, but there's a particular, like, guys, we have a lot of representation there, and women, having somebody like an Ahsoka, like a Leia, is really unfortunately unique, but really important. And so I think that there's a legacy there that they all, I mean, even Ariana Greensplat, who played young Ahsoka in that one little thing, you could tell she cared about the character. She wasn't just taking it as a job. She was talking about, I went back and I studied what Rosario does and what they did with the animation with young Ahsoka, and I tried to blend those two together. It's really cool. And I think, Dave does a good job of conveying the importance of this character to people, and he doesn't pick people lightly to take on this character, just like George wouldn't with Luke. Like if somebody had to pick up the mantle of Luke Skywalker when George was making this, I think it would have been a very similar approach.
Yeah. And I think too, because, Ashley has said this in a lot of things, that when you watch the Clone Wars, it's kind of told through Ahsoka's eyes. And so the audience, that's another reason why she says Ahsoka lives in all of us, is that the audience is also Ahsoka, because we're grieving with her. We're learning about the truths about things as she is. And so it's just such a, it's not completely unique, because like you're saying, it is kind of like Luke. I mean, like, I feel like as the audience, when you go through the original trilogy, it's definitely kind of seen through Luke and, his struggles and what he goes through. And, people grew up with him too. And a lot of people grew up with Ahsoka. And I found her later in life, but, I think there is some similarities to that as well. Jumping back a little bit, because I know both of us love Ahsoka, and
we'll talk about her for hours.
Yes, a little bit later in our Star Wars journey. How did the journey start for you? What kind of got you into Star Wars, and how has that kind of looked throughout your life?
No idea how I got into Star Wars. My mom likes the original trilogy. She gives me crap for liking all of the other ones. And one of these days I'm going to get her to watch Solo, because Han Solo is her favorite character. I'm working on it slowly but surely. But like, nobody really likes Star Wars, keeps up with Star Wars, cares about Star Wars. So how I got into it, I have no idea, because I don't know who would have put the movie on for me for the first time. But I do have a few like foundational memories of Star Wars. Three big ones of kind of the infancy of my fandom are going to the toy aisle at Toys R Us to just stare at the toys that I couldn't afford to buy. spent a lot of time there. Going to Circuit City because I'm
Mhm.
old, and buying the THX release,
Mhm.
which was the first edition that I owned. And then going to see in '97, going to see A New Hope, the re-release, because I go to the theater. I didn't know, nobody even like keeps up with Star Wars. I had no idea this was some special edition. I didn't know any of this. I just thought they were re-releasing A New Hope. I was like, we're
Mhm.
gonna go to this. Let's go. And I got upset because all of a sudden there's a dewback in my movie, and I was like, that wasn't there. So I go home,
What
I
is
watched
this?
it. Yeah, I watched it again. I'm like,
What is this dinosaur doing here?
yes, I didn't understand it. So that blew my mind for a long time. I was really confused. I guess there is one other memory is pretending to be sick to skip school so I could watch Return of the Jedi on repeat. Pulled the gambit a couple times, got away with it. I would watch Sports Center till I had it memorized, and then watch Return of the Jedi the rest of the day.
Mhm.
So that kind of really just describes me as a human being. So my journey goes on. I kind of, I am a teenage boy. I find girls and Star Wars isn't cool anymore.
Mhm.
So I kind of faded away from it. And I was actually in an eating disorder recovery center and found Star Wars art on Pinterest,
Mhm.
and kind of used that as a self-soothe technique, because I really didn't relate to a lot of the people that
Yeah.
were in there. They just, there wasn't, uh, people weren't into sports like I was into. People didn't care about the same things that I did. So I didn't really have much to talk to people about. And so when I found this, I was like, wow, there's people out there still liking Star Wars, and I just saw all these amazing creators, and that kind of led me to starting to explore it more. Found podcasts, found the Clone Wars, and then things just kind of evolved as Disney, purchased Lucasfilm. And a little bit after the time of Force Awakens, actually, right around the end of season 2 of Star Wars Rebels, I started Clashing Sabers. Started as like a website, just writing meta analysis articles, and then that's evolved to an entire host of podcasts on our network, and a really cool literacy nonprofit that helps put Star Wars books into classrooms across the country. So from that old Circuit City, from that movie theater of not knowing what the heck was going on with the dewback, to being able to use something that's really helped me a lot to be able to help other people, is, when I look at it in the grand scope of things, just a really humbling journey.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of us that went through that time as well, where we felt like we couldn't like Star Wars
Yeah,
for whatever reason. I was definitely kind of different already in the group of people that I grew up around. And so if I added Star Wars to that, I kind of felt like that was taking it over the edge a little bit. I also just kind of wanted to be normal a little bit. Like I did want to not be
yeah,
normal, but I also wanted to not be too different where I was rocking the boat too much. And so that was the thing that I chose to kind of not make as public
yeah,
of a love when I was a teenager. I mean, I definitely went and saw the prequels when they came out and definitely talked about that with people. But then after that, kind of hid that
yeah,
away a little bit because it was something I could go home and I could watch, and I could watch with my parents, and it was a comfort thing. And I just kind of secretly loved it myself and didn't really tell people again until, I don't know, I think it was probably the sequels coming out and
yeah,
before that in the lead up to it. And I started talking about theories with people about what I thought maybe these movies would be about and different things. And people were like, "Oh my gosh," like they were surprised. They're like, "Oh my gosh, like you know about these things." And they just didn't think that I secretly had this, I guess, knowledge locked away
yeah,
in the back of my mind about Star Wars. And then once I started talking to people, other people wanted to talk about it or they found it fascinating because they didn't think that I would like something like that. And then they would ask me questions. And then that turned into me finding Clone Wars, and then the pandemic and finding Rebels and watching all of those things. And then I have a friend from high school that had a podcast, and I ended up connecting and talking about Star Wars, and then ended up being a guest, like, or a co-host on that podcast for a little bit. And then, life things have happened, and that has kind of taken a break, and a few years went by, and now I'm like, oh, I want to do this.
Yeah.
And so now the cat's out of the bag for sure. And now I have Star Wars tattoos, and everyone knows it's, I can't hide it anymore.
Yeah, you can't avoid it anymore. People are like, did you hear about it? I'm like, I heard about that 8 months ago, but thank you. It's very sweet. You're trying. Yeah, it was kind of, I think I kind of wonder what it looked like to people on the outside when I got back into Star Wars, because it was dormant for so long. And then like I was slowly rebuilding my fandom. I was looking at the art, I was listening to podcasts, but I wasn't out there like saying it everywhere.
Right.
And then all of a sudden,
same.
Like it was really Rebels, when Rebels came out, and my classroom just exploded with Star Wars. Now I've got Star Wars tattoos. I mean, I've got an entire Star Wars room.
Same.
Yeah, like, what are we doing here? So, I mean, the funny thing is, like, it was always there. It was just, I had spent, I would learn when I was about 30, 31 that I'm on the spectrum. And so I look back and I go, oh, I was masking that whole time.
Yeah.
And when Star Wars was cool, I could mask more easily because I understood and I fit in. But
exactly.
when I was the short, fat, weird kid who didn't fit in, I needed to figure out how could I fit in with the athletes. I couldn't really be an athlete. I wasn't very athletic, but I wanted to hang out with the football players.
Yeah.
You have to really be into sports and girls. And so that's what I became. And I don't know if I would, change my journey so much. But I definitely am curious what my life would look like if I hadn't fallen away from Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's one of those butterfly effect things of like, I don't want to risk trading what I've got now because I really love what I've got now, but I would love to see that alternate universe, because I just have, and we can get into this, more over our conversation, but Star Wars has in so many ways helped me to heal my mental health and gain, for lack of a better term, a sense of control over that aspect of my life where I can be more functional and things like that. And it's brought me the best community in the world. Like I'm actually heading out this weekend. It will already be over by the time this comes out, but going to my best friend's wedding, and we met via the podcast. And now I'm getting to go see her get married. And so, like, those things I absolutely wouldn't trade for anything.
Yeah.
But I do wonder.
Yeah. People always talk about making adult friends and how it's so hard as an adult to make adult friends. But then I think I make friends pretty easy, I guess, or people tell me that I do, I guess. But at the same time, Star Wars does kind of make it easier too. Like, I feel like I have so many like internet friends that I can see in real life in so many places, around the US and now in other countries even.
Yeah.
And it's Star Wars that brought us together. And that's just such a cool thing. The internet, yes, it can be a bad place, and there's a lot of negative things that can come from it, but there's also some really cool things and some really positive things.
Yeah, like I think that's the hard thing for me when I do see, because I do see the negativity out there. It pops up in my feed every day. It's there. Yeah. But like, I literally have an entire family because of Star Wars. Like, that's how I refer to everybody on my Clashing Sabers team. Like, they are my family. They have gone and would go to any ends for me, and I would do the same for them. And it happened because of Star Wars, and for a long time, people are like, well, those are your internet friends. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, now, as of this weekend, I'm meeting the last person on our team that I haven't met in person. But before I actually met people in person, people didn't understand. All you guys do is talk over the internet, for an hour or two a week. I was like, yeah, but we talk about the deepest, most important things in our lives. Like, these people know stuff about me that, my actual family might not fully realize because they don't have the context of Star Wars to understand it. And my therapist always jokes, she'll be like, "Oh, you found your other autistics," is what you're saying. And I'm like, probably, but that's not the important part. I found my people. And it all came from our hyperfixation on this galaxy far, far away.
Yeah.
And like, when I got into this thing, when I started podcasting, God, 7 years ago, the something like that, which means the website started about 2 years before that. So been doing this almost a decade. Like, I got into it because I wanted to be a big show. I wanted to get to go to the premieres. I wanted to have Lucasfilm send me free stuff. I'll still take that, Lucasfilm, if you're listening. I'm not against that. But that said, I would not trade going to every Star Wars premiere for the rest of my life, for the rest of eternity, to lose one of those friends that I've made. Like, it's really amazing what this galaxy is able to do for us.
Yeah, definitely. It's that found family, which you see even in Star Wars too. And it's so fun to be able to find that within this community as well, to see, we talk a lot about the negative and, the more toxic side of different things of the fandom and how that can relate to, you're like, oh no, people are going down the dark side, or people are being absolute, only Sith still and out, that kind of thing. But to focus on the positive part of it and the fact that we see things like found family and people being adopted into families and friends being made over shared connections on different things, and it being genuine, deep friendships and not just surface level, and all of those things happening in Star Wars. And for us to in turn see that happen in real life is just so cool, and really shows the positive impact that a movie, a show, something that's not even real technically, like, to see that become, but see it come real, to see it become real, like in our world, with how people treat each other and how they welcome each other and become friends and celebrate each other and are there for each other through hard times and help each other have hope. Like, it's just, it's a really cool thing to see happen. And I don't know honestly where I would be even now without it. It's what has even helped me get through some of my hardest times, have been different things of Star Wars at different points in my life. Are there certain things that helped you during any specific times, especially with like your mental health journey and everything that you've learned? I know more in your adult life than other maybe when you were younger.
Yeah, like so just a short synopsis of my journey. Like, I developed an eating disorder around 16 and lived with that till about, well, you still live with that. It's a continual recovery kind of thing. But sought treatment after I graduated college for that, a few years after that. So I was about 22, 23. And they, diagnosed me with OCD and anxiety and depression. Pretty basic stuff for somebody who has an eating disorder. But then come 8-9 years later, I'd find out I had ADHD and I was on the spectrum. And so it took a long time to get things going in the right direction. And I had Star Wars there for me, and specifically Ahsoka. Like, Ahsoka was the big one. There's been an Ahsoka story for every aspect of my life. Like, the moment she became my favorite character was when she walked away from the Jedi Order, because at the time I was getting into becoming a teacher and I was so terrified that I was going to be letting people down. And because my dad, who is my hero and I love dearly, I envisioned that he cared only about me making money because he cared about making money, because he grew up with my grandma working 3 jobs, to make ends meet, and he's been working, full-time jobs since he was 16. And I didn't have the perspective at that time because, for those of you that don't know, when you're going through an eating disorder, your brain shrinks, which is fun. I found that out and I was like, well, that's all I've got going for me, so I better get this thing fixed. And so anyways, so I didn't quite comprehend that really he wanted to secure happiness for his family, and he saw that as a means to an end. And he was supporting essentially 2 families after him and my mom split. And when you're supporting 2 families, you've got to work a lot of hours to make sure that both those families can live a comfortable lifestyle. So I had this incorrect perception that my dad was going to be worried about how much money I was making. And so I saw Ahsoka walk away from expectations and what people expected her to do. People expected her to die, at the end, because she's not in Revenge of the Sith. And people expected her to, stay being a Jedi, even if she wasn't in the Jedi Order, and all of these different things that they expected from her. And they expected her to come back, and she walked away. And it just gave me the freedom to walk away from expectations. And from that point on, like, Ahsoka has been there for every major aspect of my life. Even going to the Ahsoka show, like, I'm in this point of real transition now in my life, and I'm kind of right about to move. I'm in a town where it's kind of just me by myself, and I realized as I was journaling, I was like, oh my God, I'm in my world between worlds. Like, it had just, Shadow Warrior had just come out, and I was like, that gave me the perspective of, okay, you're outside of time and space right now. Like, what you're doing here is preparing you for the choices you're going to make going forward. Take advantage of that time. Like, it's not going to happen again. And so every single time that I've had a problem or even a joy, like with teaching, I knew I was making the right choice with teaching because of Ahsoka. Because Ahsoka walked.
I'm getting like emotional. Sorry.
No, I get emotional about this. But like, so Rebel season 1 comes out the first year that I'm teaching. And there's all these theories going around in the podcast circuit that, Ahsoka is Fulcrum. And so I'm like, I'm anticipating it. So we get to the season finale. And this is when, it wasn't streaming. So you wanted to watch it right when it came out. So I'm watching it on the Disney XD app. First year teachers will understand this. I fell asleep at 7:00 or whatever time, like right before it came on. I was just out on the couch. And next thing I know, I'm waking up to the credits. So I go, well, I can't go back and watch it right now. It's not going to upload onto my iTunes until the next morning. I said, you know what? I've watched this with the kids all year. I had shown them, we would stay in from recess when Rebels would come out, and I'd show it to them. And so I was like, I'm going to watch it with the kids. And so there I am with my, 48 students, because I have both of my classes in there having lunch or whatever. We're watching this hour-long thing. And Ahsoka comes down that ladder, and she's fully developed. She's confident. She's Fulcrum. She made the right choice. She walked away, and it was the right choice. And that was her. And like, I still feel it when I see her like turn her head as she climbs down the ladder and says, I'm Ahsoka. To me, that was her looking at me and saying, like, you made the right choice. So that's really she's been huge for me in my mental health journey, but really just Star Wars overall has just like given me a lot of context of things. Like, I journal every morning, and 90% of the time I'm journaling about the episode of Star Wars that I watched the night before. Andor has been in a unique challenge to journal about. Ahsoka was a lot easier because it's mystical and stuff. Andor's like, you're going to really have to deal with your emotions here.
Yes.
But that's been there for me, and Ahsoka in particular has really just inspired me to continually grow and become better. And at the same time has comforted me in my journey, which is why it was so cool to get to say to Ashley, like, you helped save my life, because in a lot of ways she really did.
Yeah. It's so powerful how, and kind of crazy Like,
yeah,
an animated show that, yes, is initially made for kids is helping adults heal and learn things about themselves that they, not that we couldn't without it, but it's like doing something that we haven't found from something else
yeah,
yet, or if we're finding it somewhere else, it's making what you're feeling from something else valid. It's,
yeah,
those thoughts that you're having on from whether it's a friend or um I don't know, a partner or family or a therapist, like if you're working through something with your mental health, sometimes then and you go and watch these things and it's like, "Oh yeah, that is
yeah.
100% what I'm going through." It solidifies that thought process and helps to validate your feelings and your emotions and that sort of thing. So,
Well, and I think
yeah.
that's what myth is about.
Mhm.
Myth is here to teach lessons. And I just read a really interesting book on like the history of myth and stuff like that, and how malleable it's been across cultures, and how people will just pick certain myths that they want to mean certain things, and they will tell the story so that it means that thing. And I
Yeah.
think in a way, Star Wars is more becoming that,
Mhm.
in a healthy way. I think that's why we can have things like the Ahsoka novel and the Tales of the Jedi that are similar, but they're definitely two different stories that happen definitely at the exact same time. So they both can't be quote unquote true, right?
Right.
And but that's okay because it's myth. These are campfire stories. These
And it's
are
perspective too. I
it's
think it
perspective.
also
Yeah.
teaches us that like two people can see the same fact or the same situation in the same way. I can't
Yeah.
remember who I was talking with, but it was someone on the podcast and they were talking about how even when like a crime happens, two witnesses can say that the person had two different color shirts on.
Right.
And so it's one of those things where it is perspective, and I find it interesting how they're playing with that instead of saying, okay, well this isn't canon anymore or something like that. It's like from a certain point of view, like
Yeah.
Obi-Wan says,
Like, it's a cop out at times, but
it can be,
it
yeah.
also works. It also works. Like we definitely take it out of the context that he meant it in,
Yeah.
but I think it does definitely work.
Yeah, and I think that is a lesson that we can learn too when we're trying to understand other people and we're trying to understand what someone else is going through or the point that they're trying to make with something is that, we all kind of have our own biases no matter if we try to not have them or not, because we
Yeah.
all have our own lived experience and social norms that we have growing up with that either we've challenged or we've changed or whatever it is. Different countries have different societal expectations, different things like that. And so when you learn to see something from a different point of view, and I'm talking about like, I'm not talking about right or wrong things.
Right. No,
Like,
just getting to see through somebody else's eyes. Like,
yeah, and learning to say like, "Hey, like I might not have thought of it this way, but that perspective is so important." I think sometimes for us to get outside of our box and to see something from someone else's perspective. Whether we agree with that perspective or not, it is such a good learning experience. I
mm-hmm.
think to learn that things can be seen from a completely different point of view, and it, I think, helps us understand our reality, our stories, how we see life even better. Either it helps
Yeah.
us to adjust that a little bit or it helps us go, okay, I see that, but I think I am right in going in this direction for myself. And so yeah, it is that myth and mythos and kind of that hero's journey and diving into that I love that George Lucas did and that you can definitely tell people are continuing to do, especially like Dave Filoni. I think
Yeah,
that's
for
very
sure.
important for him too as a
Well,
creator.
and like if this story was told a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, it's not making it to us and being the same story. Like, you can look at any text over, the years, over generations, it's retold and it's told in different ways, like you could look at the Bible, you could look at Huckleberry Finn, like choose whichever story that has been written and rewritten 1,000 times. How many versions of Cinderella do we have?
A lot.
Exactly. Which
and
one's
the
canon?
Little Mermaid too,
and the Little Mermaid, like all of these things, we have so many different versions. Like, which one is the canon one? Is it the Grimm's brother? Is it the Disney one? Is it if it's the Disney one, is it the live action or the anime? Like, it doesn't matter. It's the theme that matters. Like, it's the lesson that it's teaching you that matters. And that's the point of it. And that's what I think made George so effective, and why his stories stand out, and the people making it today, I think, have a good grasp on this. Is start with the theme in mind. A lot of people say start with the end in mind, but I say it's start with the theme in mind. Figure out what theme you want to convey, then figure out how you're going to convey it. And that's what George did. He originally wanted to convey these, lessons, and saw himself doing it through Flash Gordon. Well, Flash Gordon fell through. So what's he going to do next? So now I've got to create my own thing. And that happened to be a happy accident that led to, a $4 billion paycheck one day, but a lot of really good things for people. And it's all started with him focusing on these things mattered to me. These ideas mattered to me, and I need to convey them to other people. And I think when you look at modern Star Wars stories, if you ask yourself, like, what is the theme of this? You get a better grasp of what it is. I'm not going to name the book because I don't want to bias anybody against a certain book, but there was a certain Star Wars book I read that I wasn't too huge of a fan of. And I was talking with my co-host on our book podcast, and I said, tell me what the theme is of this book. And she just stopped and she goes, I really don't know. And I was like, and I think that explains exactly why this book doesn't work. And you're going to have those. Like, I'm not trying to say there's plenty of imperfect things in Star Wars. But I think that is the dividing line between what makes Star Wars work really well. And you can look at things like Andor and Ahsoka, which I think have clear themes to them, versus some things that might not hit as well. Like, I even like Young Jedi Adventures. That's got some great themes going on in it. It's going to beat you over the head with it because it's a preschool show. But it hits that same idea. It has a very clear theme that it wants to focus on. And that is the reason they're telling the story. Not because it's Star Wars, not because they had, $2 million to spend and needed to figure out where to spend it. They told it because that's what they needed, the themes that they needed to convey to their audience.
Yeah. And I think, speaking of themes, one of the main ones is hope, right? And even if it's just a teeny tiny little, they say it a lot in different shows and different movies, but a spark of hope, and that it's going to light a fire, whether it's a fire of hope or a fire of rebellion, like it still symbolizes hope and in standing up for what's right and moving forward even when everything seems so dark and impossible even around you. And that is something that I think those of us who have struggled with mental health really can identify with. Because I think even with medication or therapy or, however it is that you are journaling, whatever it is that you do to work on yourself and to grow and to be a better person, at the end of the day, it's still that almost, it's not even basic. I want to say basic thing, but it's not easy. It's hard. But that little thing of finding the hope for the next day and continuing to go on. And sometimes that's all we have, honestly, is to find that hope and to hold on to it, even if it's something very tiny and little. But that little spark of hope is what can help move us forward to surviving another day. And I don't mean to sound bleak, but sometimes
sometimes that's real. Like, so in the span of a few months, like, I lost my dad unexpectedly, like literally out of the blue. And thank you. And got a divorce all in less than a year.
That's so much.
It was a lot. And there was other stuff going on too and stuff like that. And it was the first time in my life that I had lost hope. I had genuinely lost hope. And that's when that World Between Worlds thing hit me. And that's when a story like Leia in The Last Jedi hit me. Because here's Leia, who is the embodiment of hope, who never loses hope, and who's there to lift her up? Luke Skywalker. So and I looked to Luke Skywalker and I looked at his story more and what can I learn from him? And that hope started back up again, not because, I mean, I was doing things, I was trying to heal and those things, but really regaining that hope came from these stories that are about hope and about the struggle when you lose it. You know, like that's, I think what makes Star Wars great, and I say this all the time because, you know, George always said Star Wars is for 12-year-olds, right? I always say, yeah, that's true, but Star Wars doesn't talk down to its audience. Mm-hmm. It's not going to try to tell you this is what life is going to be and you should be happy, you know, and ecstatic about it. And you're always going to have hope no matter what, you know, like a lot of fairy tales do. Now, this story is going to tell you you're going to get kicked in the gut and drugged across the ground, and life is going to suck sometimes. You're going to fail as a master. You're going to feel outcast from your family. You're going to get stranded in a galaxy away for 20 years and, you know, not know if anybody's coming to get you. All of these things that, you know, could lead to not having hope, but yet these characters still find a way to have hope. Not because it's easy, but because it's hard. Yeah. And that is something I think that is very powerful. And Star Wars doesn't try to hide behind, well, we're going to have hope because hope is the right thing to do. Yeah, hope is the right thing to do, but it's not the easy thing to do. You know, being a good person is the right thing to do. Let me tell you what, when somebody's driving next to you like a maniac, it's really hard to be the better person, you know? But Star Wars shows us that. And I think that that's really important. I think that's something that is really, it's created a standard for me that, you know, no matter what I was going through, there was a standard of Star Wars of this is the kind of person that you're supposed to be. This is who Luke Skywalker is. This is who Ahsoka is. This is who Leia is. Maybe you're Kylo Ren right now, but you can be Ben Solo again. You know, maybe you're Luke at the end of Empire right now, but look at him at the end of Return of the Jedi. You know, those kind of things. I think Star Wars provides us that by being very real with us about life is going to suck sometimes, you know, and Star Wars, I say Star Wars is tragedy because it is, but tragedy can bring us hope because tragedy can be our starting point and we can go somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean, think of like Anakin. I mean, he was considered the best of the best. I mean, yes, he had some red flags going on.
One or two.
You know, but like as far as the Jedi that maybe didn't know all his personal struggles, like he on the outside he was the savior of the Republic. He was one of the best Jedis that there was. He was
the hero with no fear.
Yeah. And, you know, to see what he became and to see that, you know, good people can become their worst nightmare. You know, what you fear you could be can happen. And then to see him be redeemed at the end is just like, that doesn't happen. In our, you know, the real world, you know, someone like Darth Vader doesn't get redeemed at the end. He doesn't come back to the light and isn't welcomed back into the light, you know? And I mean, obviously, you know, people argue about, and I don't disagree with them. Like if he hadn't died, there would have been a lot of like in galaxy real world, you know, repercussions for his decisions. And it's not like he would have just been brought back to a place of honor, but
There's a comic with like a white suit Vader. Like I think it's like a Infinity's comic or something like that. But like, no, I think you're spot on there. Like there's a difference though between redemption and atonement. And I think that that's where the confusion lies for a lot of people. Anakin was redeemed. He returned to the light. He didn't atone for what he did.
Right.
Like his son had to deal with, his daughter had to deal with the burden of his actions. You know, they had to bear that.
Yeah.
And Ahsoka, who, you know, surrogate daughter of sorts, like they had to deal with and atone for those things by building the Republic. But Anakin was redeemed, and we can all be redeemed. It doesn't necessarily mean that everything is washed away, you know.
Right.
And I think that's the important thing, is because if Anakin can be redeemed, we can all be redeemed, you know. And that's the big thing.
Yeah. And I think that that's another thing. I think that not that other people haven't been in a dark place, and not that other people haven't been down or depressed or different things like that, but I do think there is definitely a difference when you are like clinically depressed and you know, you struggle with things like your mind really, like, I don't know how to describe it, and I don't want to bum people out and get like too dark, too deep, but you go to some really bad places in your mind, and it's hard even with talking about trying to raise awareness for mental health and break the stigma on it. Like, it's, I think if some people knew, like, truly, like, the dark places my mind has been, people would be absolutely shocked. And the best way I can describe it is seeing someone like Anakin being redeemed in the end, and that there was still light. Like, there are places that I have been mentally that I didn't think there was any coming back from it. Like, that there was any light left. All hope was gone. There's no way things can get better. And somehow they did. And I know that some people, things get so hard and so heavy that it doesn't end up that way. And it doesn't end up the way where we are, where we're still here and we're still alive to talk about it. And that's a heavy, hard burden to know and to think about, that some people do lose the fight, and that really sucks. But for those of us that are still here fighting, and I think for the people that maybe didn't win this round and in this life, we all want people to not feel alone, and we all want people to know that there are some of us that have struggled too, and we've been there, and there can be hope, and there can be a light on the other side, and we're not going to sugarcoat it, kind of like you were talking about how Star Wars does, and say that it's easy. It's not easy. It's really, really stinking hard. And it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of rebuilding and doing a lot of the things that you see in Star Wars. But yeah, it's a beautiful, crazy, weird, messed up sometimes life, but we're out here doing it, you know.
And I think it's important for those of us who have survived and are surviving to tell our stories, you know. Like I've never been one to hide, you know, my story very much. Like one of the things that hit me when I was at the eating disorder center was there's nobody like me here. And I kind of, you know, learned more about it, and I was like, there should be other people, like statistically, there should be at least one other person like me here, and there's not. And so I was like, that means somebody's not taking care of themselves. Somebody's not helping, or somebody's not getting help, rather.
Or they're not talking about it. They don't.
They're
feel
not
like
talking
they
about
can.
it. Or they don't know, or whatever it is. Because I mean, I did for 4 out of like the 5 years that I was majorly struggling with my eating disorder. Like I had no idea I had an eating disorder. Like I had no clue, let alone everything else that was going on.
What made you kind of realize that?
When the scale hit 100 pounds, when I was a 21-year-old grown man that weighed 100 pounds, that, and I was eating a protein shake and half an apple as a post-workout meal after I had worked out for 4 hours on my second workout of the day. I remember calling my mother and saying, I think I have a body image issue. And here's, I don't hold this against her, so I'm going to share this. Like, here's how preposterous that sounded at this point.
No pressure to go into any of this.
No. I want
asking that question.
But I think this is important. She laughed. And in retrospect, I realized, like, hearing a guy having a problem with his body just was ridiculous at this point, because it was before we really talked about these things.
Yeah.
And so I was like, no, I'm serious. And then she realized, like, I wasn't playing around, and we started figuring out how to get me help. And, my sister found the treatment center for me, all of these different things. It took years and years and years because people didn't know. And even and I didn't know how to explain what was going on with me, because all I knew was something wasn't right. Yeah. Right. Like, even beyond the eating disorder, I knew the eating disorder was a consequence of something else not being quote unquote right. And I didn't know how to explain it. And for anybody who knows me, and probably anybody who's listened to this, I'm not want for words. I have all the words. I can say all the things. I will talk, I will write forever. So when I couldn't figure out how to say it, like, that was a major concern. And for years, I mean, my dad would be like, dude, I just don't understand why you can't just eat a cheeseburger. Like, just eat a cheeseburger. Like, it'll be fine. And I was like, I can't explain why I can't. I just physically can't. Like, it will ruin the next 3 days of my life to eat this one meal. And again, like, going back to Star Wars was there, like, I started to recover, and I started to have Star Wars, and I started to see sometimes life sucks, but you can make it through. Sometimes life sucks, but you can make it through. And so it really encouraged me to, I guess, explore what was going on. But it also really encouraged me to tell my story, because I realized, here's these people telling their stories. I realized how much of themselves the Star Wars creators put into the story. And it just seemed unfair for me. And this is just my opinion, and I don't mean this is right for anybody else, but it seemed unfair to me to not share my story when I had the potential to do that, when I had a platform to do that. When I got my own classroom, like, I don't hide these things from my kids. I have a service dog that's with me at school, and 10-year-old to 12-year-old kids that I teach, they're going to ask. They don't know they're not supposed to ask why you have a service dog. And I'll explain to them, hey, I've got this, and this. They don't care. They don't look down on that, because they haven't been, the stigma hasn't been, they haven't been taught to. And like, I'm super grateful, because, like, I in no way want this to sound like I think it happened because of me, but I was on the beginning wave of men talking about their mental health. Like, that time when I was recovering from my eating disorder was really when that started to pick up. And I mean, we still have a ton of work to do, but it's gaining momentum, and it's really good to see. But it takes people sharing their stories, and whether that is in Star Wars or whether that's over a podcast. Like, I can't write fiction to save my life, but I could talk. I can write my story out. I can come on a podcast. And I think that that's really important. And that's something that, like, I wouldn't be able to do without Star Wars.
Yeah, definitely. And I thank you for sharing that, first of all. Especially since, like you were saying, it's not like when you went to the treatment center, and you're like, why is there nobody like me here?
Yeah.
Like, surely somebody else is struggling with that. I know when you feel alone and you feel like it's just me, that can even be even more daunting and even harder. And it can really mess with your brain even more, because you're like, why isn't somebody else? Like, I don't like using the word crazy, because it has so many like negative connotations to it.
Yeah.
But like, when you're in a place like that and you are in a very dark place, I don't really know how else to describe it. It's almost like your mind just looks for something to justify how much you hate yourself, right?
Yeah.
Or what you're doing to yourself or how you feel about yourself. It's like, oh, nobody else, and I'm not trying to speak for you, but I know like I've been here when like somebody else wasn't really speaking about something and I felt alone in it. It's like, oh, nobody else is feeling this way? Oh, guess what? You are crazy. And that's what your mind tells you.
Yeah.
And it like, or for me at least, I don't want to speak to anybody else, but for me, it was almost like justifying how much self-hate I had for myself. And that like, for me, kept me in such a deep depression because everything I did wrong and everything that seemed on me just justified my feelings for myself. And yeah, so thank you for speaking out about it, because if you do feel alone, I think it makes it harder. And so I'm sure there is so many people that you sharing in whatever form it's been. I'm sure it has helped somebody, even if they haven't told you that. Sometimes it takes people years, or they might not ever. It might be immediate, but I can guarantee you that someone has heard something that you've said and that it has impacted their life in a positive way. I can guarantee that.
I got very unlucky in the mental health roll of the dice, but I got very lucky in the people that I was surrounded with. I looked around and I was alone when I was in the treatment center, but I was never alone in life. Like I had my family there, and even though we didn't know what was going on, and even when for some unknown reason I kept trying to do everything I could to isolate myself, like I always had them there for me. And I did start to isolate myself more and more because I couldn't explain why I felt different. And they set hard boundaries on me, but they never quit on me. And I think that gave me a lot of strength and a lot of courage that I don't think everybody has the opportunity to have. I was really, really lucky in that regard. So again, like that's part of what made me feel like it was part of my responsibility to share, my story. And so like, I understand if other people don't, and that's totally fine. But for me, that's something that's really important. I had a friend who had an eating disorder who was my light at the end of the tunnel because she was living a life that I wanted. She was, had all these things that I envisioned myself having one day. And she did it after eating disorder recovery. And I was like, well, she can do it. I can do it. Mm-hmm. Like, one of those things. So I think it's important, whatever our story is, that we share it however we do. Some people express it through art. Some people express it through podcasts. Some people express it through creating TV shows and movies and whatever it may be. Some people do it through, writing or community service or whatever it is. Like those things matter and they have an impact. And I don't go out and try to find ways to proselytize my story or anything like that. Like I just live my life, and when those opportunities arise, like I take advantage of them. Starting this show, I was like, heck yeah, I want to do this mental health month, thing. Like this sounds great.
And that's true, because I asked you if you wanted to specifically come on for May.
Yeah.
You were just open about your story, and I was like, oh, this would be, if you were interested and it's something that you wanted to do, I was like, would you come and share that for this month? Everybody this month, I asked, would you be willing to share, so that if you are open to it, would you be okay expounding more and sharing more about, your mental health portion of your story? Because it's something that I've struggled with, and it's something that I've had a hard time with. And I wanted, one, for other people that have dealt with similar things or are questioning if they're dealing with certain different things, had somebody that they could listen to and hear from their experience and get hope from that. And then secondly, people who know someone, because even if maybe it's not you, I guarantee someone in your life, whether they have openly talked about it or not, someone is probably struggling with something secretly, or maybe they've shared with you, and how those people can be there for their friends or family or loved ones, because I think that's important too, is also
Yeah.
how people who might not be in the same fight with us, but can fight alongside of us and be there for us, and how they can do that, whether it's their kid that they might see something and wonder, are they going through something, or if it's a friend or a loved one, anything like that. So,
Yeah. Well, and I think for me, like the most rewarding experience that I've had out of like all of this has been seeing my family be more open about talking about mental health and getting medication when they need it and things like it's something we openly talk about now, where like we joke about it, and in my family, if you're joking about it, that means you actually care.
yeah.
We've got a weird, that's our love language. Humor is our love. My mom's like, when I start being nice to you, then you've got to be worried. Like, she's picking on me, she still loves me.
Yeah.
But like when we openly start talking about these things, like I was the first one in the family to really start dealing with those kind of issues out in the open. Like I had no choice. Like, it was all out there. Like
Mhm.
it was affecting everybody. And but because I had their support, I felt safe to share my story in other places. And because I did that, it influenced them to talk more about it and be more about it. And I'm obviously like, I'm seeing things through my lens. I don't have the arrogance to believe it was just me. Like the world went through a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But, there's definitely that impact there that, sharing your story is going to help other people. And I think that, I was just thinking about this watching Ahsoka and how Ahsoka really tries to, I think, kind of hide what happened with her and Anakin to Sabine. Like it's not so much said in the text, I think it's more subtext.
Yeah.
But when she starts to open up about the impact that Anakin had on her, and I imagine Sabine and Ahsoka having these conversations where they talk about, how Ahsoka felt that she couldn't really be Sabine's master because of what happened with Anakin and things like that, and how that is going to, while they're in the Wayward Galaxy on Peridia, like help rebuild their bond and stuff. I've got this whole idea in my head about it because I spend way too much time thinking about Ahsoka. But like, yeah, I don't know how I got off on that tangent, but
That's okay.
sharing our stories, I think, is kind of the big point there. Like it makes an impact, whether you see it now or you see it 10 or 20 years down the road.
Yeah.
Like it's going to make an impact.
Well, Ahsoka tried to help people, and I think sometimes if you feel like you should share your story, that is helping someone. So
Yeah.
I see the connection between, Ahsoka and that for sure. I mean, she said, whenever you see someone, no matter what, you help them. And
Yeah.
I think that's been a healing piece for me. Like, even when I'm in a really bad place, like, it's easy for me to help someone else, even
Yeah.
over helping myself. And and sometimes through helping someone else, I learn how to help myself. That's something that has helped me kind of reflect on how I'm treating myself and think, okay, if I'm giving this person this advice and I'm helping them and I'm giving them grace in this area, I should be able to do the same for myself. And so in
100%.
helping others, that's helped me heal and help myself, which that was something that really stood out to me that Ashley said at MegaCon when someone asked,
Mhm.
specifically even with mental health and different things, like someone in the audience, I don't remember their exact question, but it was kind of like, when things are hard and you're going through a hard time, what do you do? And that was her answer, was you help somebody. And
Yeah.
she used the quote that Ahsoka said, and how, even in her darkest moments, even if she was hiding that from other people, she was still out there helping someone. And that that resonated with me so much, because I've always been a helper,
Yeah.
and I've always kind of put myself and what I need kind of on the back burner. And so I really identified with that with Ahsoka. And so now I'm trying to use that in a healthy way and and look at those lessons,
Right.
like I just said. And if I'm helping them and I'm giving them that grace and I love that person that much, why am I not turning that around and applying that to myself? So,
Yeah. Like the same thing for me. Like I talk with my students all the time about, trusting the process and dealing with failure. Like I tell them at the beginning of the school year, I'm like, I expect everybody to fail in my class, and they look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, you're not going to fail my class. I want you to fail in my class. It's different. And like, I want you to make mistakes and learn from them. And I want you to trust the process. And I tell them, like, I can see the end that you can't see yet because I've done this before. And all of these things that I tell them. And then I've got to go sit while I'm journaling in the morning and realize I'm not doing that for myself.
Yeah.
Like that's a hard thing to face when you do that. And like you said, you do it for somebody else and you're not willing to do it for yourself. Like it's a kind of messed up mentality when you really like think of it at its core. It's like it's a little bit cruel, to be totally honest,
Yeah. It's definitely self-punishing for sure.
Yeah. And that's really hard to face. But again, like Star Wars gives us a place where we can see that. We can see Sabine, and I just rewatched the Ahsoka series, so I'm like all over it right now.
No, I love it. Yeah.
Like Sabine and Ahsoka like beat themselves up so much over what happened in their relationship that it completely, absolved them from being able to have a relationship. And that clearly hurt both of them. They clearly knew the other person was hurt, but because they were not willing to look themselves in the mirror and realize, hey, I'm not showing up for myself, they weren't able to show up for each other. And I think that's the biggest thing, is like sometimes it is easier to show up for somebody else. And I don't like the whole you've got to fill your cup before you can fill somebody else's cup, because I'm sorry, sometimes your cup has holes in it, and the best thing that you can do is start pouring into somebody else's cup. But
it's a balance for sure.
It's a balance. But like, if you think about it, like you have a cup with a hole in it. You have a cup that doesn't have a hole in it. The cup with the hole in it, you pour in to the other cup, and then all of a sudden you can stick that cup in the cup with the hole and nothing spills, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a give and take. There's a unique balance. Like there's a third way, is the way I like to say it. Like I always say Luke found the third way on the second Death Star. Like, there was saving his father, or there was killing Darth Vader. He found the third way, where he got to save his father without killing anybody, without having to raise a weapon. He got, like all of these things he did. Like, I think it's okay to not fall into this like dashboard narrative of, oh, you've got to, take care of yourself first. Sometimes that's way harder than taking care of somebody else. But you do have to learn how to take care of yourself. And sometimes you do that through taking care of other people. Like I've become a much better human being from being a teacher than I've become a teacher. Like, because I've had to really narrow down what are the things that actually matter in life, because you've got 45 minutes to convey it to them. And that's really hard to do.
And you've got all these kids that you feel, I'm sure, responsible.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Too. There been any situations, I guess, for like people listening that either are healing maybe parts of themselves when maybe they were neurodivergent as a kid and it was missed, and no one said anything, and they didn't feel like they had help from family or teachers or different people, or someone who has a kid now, or someone who's thinking maybe I struggle with some of these things too. What advice would you give to those people?
Oh man, there's so much. I would say,
sorry, that was like a 3-part question.
No. I think it all comes down to, and I have this tattooed on me, on my Leia tattoo that I have on my leg. It's a Carrie Fisher quote. It says, "Stay afraid and do it anyway." And I think that's the important thing to remember, is that I think a lot of, especially parents, are scared to, well, what if I'm wrong?
Mhm.
And what if they're just rowdy? What if they don't have ADHD? Or
Yeah.
what if I don't know how to handle a kid that has autism? What if I'm not equipped with that, skill set and all of these things? And I would say stay afraid and do it anyways. Like, you can always go and get checked and be told it's not that. And then you at least have information to deal with it. And that's
Yeah.
what I've like. Information and education is power. That's why I'm so passionate about what I do, because I feel like I have things that I can give to educate and inform people and parents and stuff like that. And again, like going back to the kind of the idea I had before, like it would be kind of selfish of me not to. Like that's how I view it for myself. And I think that because of that, I can see things that I recognized in myself that I didn't know what they were, right? And so I can share my story with these parents and with these kids and say, "Hey, this is what happened to me. This messed me up for a really long time. I'm not saying your kid has this. I'm
Mhm.
saying I see the same things," right? And a lot of parents are very receptive to that. So again, it goes back to just sharing your story and sharing what you've been through. I think that's the most important thing. And so if you're afraid to share your story, or if you're afraid that something is going on, stay afraid and do it anyway. If you're afraid your kid has something, stay afraid. That's good. That means you care, but do it anyway. That's going to suck. It's going to be hard, but if Carrie Fisher could do it, you could do it. That's kind of, like if Ahsoka could do it, you can do it. That's what I always tell myself. Like Luke stood in front of the darkness and he did it anyways,
Yeah.
and that, I think that would be the biggest lesson.
I think that's great advice. And I love it when I hear people that maybe everything wasn't handled in a perfect way
Yeah.
when they were kids, turning around and instead of saying, well, I didn't help, so you're not going to either, or something like that, to instead being like that, saying, I don't want this to happen to somebody else. So I'm going to share and I'm going to advocate for change and I'm going to try to make the world a better place, especially in this area that I understand, and make it better for the kids of today so that they don't have to in turn go through the same things that I went through. And I think that is so powerful to do and so needed in this world that has so many things going on.
Yeah.
I don't know, just trying to make it a better place, and it doesn't have to be such a big scale. It can just be in your area of influence with what you're doing, and that does make such a huge difference.
I'm not sure if you've heard of The Living Force, the new book that just came out by John Jackson Miller.
Yes, I have it. I just have not read it yet because I have a stack of books.
this is a very minor spoiler, but it's not anything.
That's okay.
So Qui-Gon essentially challenges the Jedi Council to help one person. And so that's kind of the crux idea of the book, is go help one person. And when I started teaching, that was my mission, is I wanted to help somebody the way my 5th grade teacher helped me. And she ended up taking her own life a few years after I had her, through some mental health issues of her own. And so I never fully got to tell her thank you. And so I said, I need to realize, this is literally a conversation I had with myself when I went into teaching. I need to realize I might not ever know who that one kid is. Yeah. And that's got to be okay. And then I got really lucky, because after like my 2nd year of teaching, I had kids come back to me from the grade before. Hey, I'm doing this thing you taught me. Hey, remember when you said this? Hey, I had a girl, I'm thinking about hurting myself. She came to me first. I talked her off of, a metaphorical ledge, if you will.
Yeah.
And I looked around and I go, well, oh crap, you can do more than one person. And that really was a game changer for me, because I very much was in the mindset of, I'm just helping my one. I'm helping my one and I'm getting out. That was kind of the mindset I had in it. And once I found the 1, and then the 2, and then the 3, and it was just like, you can do this again and again. Like, I think once you realize the impact that you're capable of, I think it opens you to having a bigger impact than you thought you could have.
Yeah.
When you limit yourself to thinking my story is only good enough to help people who have autism, or my story is only good enough to help people who have an eating disorder, or my story is only good enough to help a non-binary person or a person of color or whatever it may be, because that's part of who you identify as, I think you're limiting yourself. Like, I think we are humans and we all relate to each other in unique and different ways. And by taking, I guess, advantage of the disadvantages of our life and taking those out into the world and making a difference, not in spite of them, but because of them, that's how the world changes. It's like it's drops in a bucket, like I said earlier, like I was kind of on the first wave of men talking about their mental health. I didn't do anything super revolutionary. I didn't have a big social media presence or anything like that. Like, I went on my local news and talked about it. I talked to my friends about it. I talked to my students about it. I didn't go, okay, kids, let's sit down and let's talk about your teacher's eating disorder. It was like, hey, guys, you know how you bully each other? Like, I almost died because people bullied me.
Yeah.
Like,
let's not do that.
Like, and having very real conversations with them about, like, I need you to realize I might not be sitting here right now because of a bully and decisions I almost made around that bully and the dark places that it led me. And those little actions are what change the world, not these big things. And I think that Star Wars shows us that when we try to do things on a galactic scale, like the Jedi trying to win this war, that's when we fall. But Ahsoka helping the Martez sisters is the reason that Mandalore gets saved. Like, that's pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's never too late too. If you think, oh, enough people are talking or this person's talking about it, someone else might not listen to that person.
Yeah.
They might listen to you. And you might not believe me saying that, but there could be someone out there that you might be the only person that they'll listen to. And I'm not saying like live in fear that you're going to do something wrong and it's your fault or you didn't say something soon enough. That's not what I mean. I just mean you don't know the power that your story could have. And I've had people, that have said, I don't know if my story is cool enough or meaningful enough to like share it on the podcast or different things. And it's like that. I hate that we feel that way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like I haven't struggled with that. I mean, that was one of my big barriers for even doing this in the first place, is I thought, one, even though there's some people out there will say that it doesn't matter anymore if you're a female and you like Star Wars, we're past that. We're not really past that. There's still a lot of hard things that come with that. And so I was afraid coming into this, honestly, that there would be like a bullseye on my back, and for me to say that I enjoy all of the movies, it doesn't mean that I love them all or they're all my favorite, but I genuinely enjoy all of the movies. And, that I'm including everybody and that I genuinely want to hear what everyone has to say, even if it's different than, my opinion on a movie or something or whatever. I was really afraid of the backlash of that. And I know that everybody will deal with that at some point. I know that that will come at some point. It will. And I'm okay with that. And I had to get past that though. And this fear that I don't belong in this space, and this fear that I might not have enough lore knowledge, or I might not have read enough books, or, different things like that, whatever it could be, would disqualify me from being able to do what we're doing here. And I had to work past that and know that it's okay. It's okay if I don't have the answers to everything. It's okay if I'm not an encyclopedia of everything Star Wars, like some of
you
the
must know all of Legends and all of canon.
And it's one of those things where I've had a lot of issues with feeling like I have a place at the table in a lot of areas of my life, or just dealing with honestly accepting that I'm an adult and I can have opinions and I don't have to agree with everybody.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's something that I've struggled with for a long time. And I honestly, like you were saying, how you wonder, you look back and that what if of, if there was another universe where you kept Star Wars with you all the time, there is a part of me that wonders, what if I didn't have this crippling insecurity my entire life? What if a few things that I think were the foundations of causing that didn't happen? Where would I be? And even though I think I could be in a pretty cool place with, whatever aspect of my life it is, I honestly wouldn't change anything because I wouldn't be where I am today. And I'm so grateful for where I am today. And I wouldn't change the overall picture. Is there things that I wish that I could have done maybe differently or a little bit better? Sure, I think we all have that. But I think at the end of the day, just like the characters that we love in Star Wars, we can't focus on that, and we kind of have to move past it and move forward into who we are today, and into that next person we can help, or act of kindness, or what we can grow and learn about ourselves, what darkness we can fight and see within ourselves in order to embrace the light. Because I really don't think, if there wasn't that dark, or if there wasn't the hard times that we've gone through, we would not be appreciative of where we are now, or what we have in front of us.
Yeah. Like, I always jokingly say, like, I wouldn't change anything. I would just shorten the time span of things. Like, I wouldn't get rid of the fact that I had an eating disorder. I'd just make it like a year or two instead of 5 to 7. Like, like, I wouldn't change that I have ADHD. I just would have found out when I was 23 instead of 33. Like, all of these kinds of things.
I wouldn't have missed my entire 20s.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like how I feel. I feel like my 20s are gone. Like, I don't remember them because my depression was
like
so
literally
bad.
Like, I literally have, like, people ask me about, what was it like? I'm like, I legitimately don't remember. Like, I have phases of my life that are completely blocked out, and people are just like, you have no memory of it? No memory of it. I have certain key core memories, but other than that, I could not tell you, like, what I was doing. It was just trying to survive and
get to the next day.
Yeah, literally get to for me, it was the end of the day. Because once I got to go to bed, I could read a book and go to sleep, and it stopped for a little while.
There were years where I think I got home and I went to sleep, and I woke up and I ate dinner and maybe tried to watch a TV show, and then went to bed and got up and struggled through the day. And it was just
a continual cycle of struggle. Yeah.
One of the things I think people don't talk about too, even sometimes within people sharing and being open about their mental health, is the hard switch it is to, now I have information that I was missing. And now I have these answers that I didn't have before. And I understand how these things happened, or why I behaved in this way or made these decisions. And then we get stuck in feeling like, well, how do I move past that? And I think sometimes it's hard, because there's kind of that place of that in between, or, you can say, am I in the world between worlds right now? Is this preparing me for what's next? And I think sometimes we try to rush through before recovery and then recovery, right? It's like either you're bad or you're good. Not that it's a bad or a good as in like morality, but like either you're okay or you're not okay. There's not that in between of figuring out the process of what it means to move forward, what it means to make those changes in your life. Because, like you, I found out that I had ADHD a couple of years ago. I don't even know if it's been 2 years yet. And I'm 34. So I was 30, around 32. And while I say it was life changing, I don't mean it was life changing in a sense that my life just got better. It was like I had to start over all over again in a sense because I was given this information. I was like, light bulb, I get it now. I get why I acted this way. And then when the pandemic happened, I almost had this identity crisis because I was this extrovert. Everyone knew me as an extrovert. As in high school, I was friends with everybody and I was constantly having people over and I was constantly like around people and doing something with people. And I look back on that now and I'm like, oh, I was masking.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, like I was masking as an extrovert. I was trying to be normal because I've always had this thing in the back of my mind of going, there's something off. There's something wrong with me. I don't know what it is. What is it? Something's missing. I don't understand this. And then when the depression hit my freshman year of college, and then I struggled with, do I want to be alive anymore? And different things like that. And then getting married extremely young. And then almost us growing up together in a relationship and all of that. Like it's really hard. And, starting out as an adult in a career and figuring out what you want to do with your life. And is what you said and acted like you wanted to do really truly what you really want to do? Or was that, like you were saying, just fulfilling maybe an expectation you're putting on yourself that you thought someone else had on you, but you're really just putting that on yourself. Like it was hard. And so then when the pandemic happened and then I'm at home more and I got to have some time alone and be alone and not have to be a people person all the time. I was like, maybe I'm an extroverted introvert.
like
maybe I actually don't love this. It was just how I coped with myself and my life. And that was really eye-opening. And then learning that information, like you learned about yourself too at a similar age, it's hard because then what do you do with that, And so I feel like I've almost had to relearn how to have conversations even with people because I was such an oversharer and I was such an open book, and I love being an open book. But now I sit back and I go, why am I oversharing it? Oversharing. Is it because I feel awkward? Is it because I feel like I should be talking right now when I don't need to be talking? Is it because I'm trying to process something in my mind and I need to speak it out loud in order to work through it? And that's how my brain kind of like is thinking through this issue that I have on. Or am I just word vomiting? Okay, if I'm not just and so I'm learning how to completely almost reprocess my world and how I think and how my brain works. And it's difficult and it's hard and it's taking longer than I wanted it
to. That's the thing. It always takes longer than you want it to. And that's the hard part, but it's a continual cycle. And like that's why the hero's journey is a circle, like we're always going on that. We're always, sometimes our call to adventure isn't as nice as, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. Like sometimes it's like, hey, welcome to life. You have ADHD and autism. Like, welcome to being 30.
And like, here's this too.
Yeah. Also, we're going to, take your hero from you and give you all these other tragedies around it and all of this other stuff that happens. And it's like, hold on, I was just figuring out that other thing. If we could put this on pause. And like, that's not how life works, unfortunately. But like, again, like Star Wars tells us that, like Star Wars shows us that like, you don't have time to sit back and wait for one problem to be over, and because another problem is going to come right on top of it, and you've got to be prepared for that. And I think the difference is, and this is something that's really helped me, is Star Wars shows you that you can. And that for me has always been the big thing, is like, once the rebels had the Death Star plans, they could figure it out. It was unlikely. It was hard. It took the right person making the right choice. In that case, actually multiple people, with Han coming back. But once they had the information, they could figure it out. And I think that was always the biggest thing for me, is like, I just don't have enough information. And once I had that information, okay, cool, this makes sense. Like, I remember it was hilarious. Like, I didn't really make a big deal about my autism diagnosis or whatever. And was out with my family, and we were walking to dinner. And I don't even remember what the conversation was, but I mentioned that I've been diagnosed as autistic. And my mom just turns around to me and goes, "You're autistic?" And I go, "Yeah, that's why I have problems in social situations." And she just goes, "Oh." And it was like, it just like hit her like, oh, a lot of his life just makes sense right now. But it was like I just kind of looked at her, and she just kind of looked at me, and we were like, okay, we understand now, right? It was like that information covered that barrier that we had of like, why does he not fit in the way everybody else functions? Why does he get overwhelmed and have to go into the other room and stuff like that? And it was just like, in that moment, it all made sense to her, and it all made sense to me once I got that. Once you had the plans, you can do something about it. And I think as kind of our whole conversation has shown, like, if we can, and I know not everybody can, but thankfully you can, and you're creating a space. Thankfully I've been put in a situation where I can. Like, if we can share these things, we should definitely be sharing them, because we could be somebody's Death Star plans.
Yeah. And not to speak for you, but I know, like, for me, and I know other people have said this, but like, my Instagram is always open, or whatever it is. If you have
100%.
questions, I might not have the answers. I'm not a professional. I'm not a doctor by any means, or a therapist or anything like that, but I can listen, and I can try to send you in a direction that might be able to help. And I'm getting better, because I used to live in a lot of fear if someone came to me that, what if I didn't say the right thing? Or what if I wasn't there for them 24 hours a day? And then they made a bad choice, and it was my fault. And it was my fault, and I wasn't there for them. I've had to learn also about healthy boundaries, which is really hard. So, I will do my best in the capacity that I can. If
100%.
anyone needs any help, and then in areas that I feel like I can't help, or I don't know, I will either try to find someone, or find the resources that maybe can help somebody. Because I know for me, and this is taking it way back, because you will probably know about this, but not everybody listening will know about this. But what really helped me with my depression, and learning that that's what I had, was on this, little social media thing called MySpace back in the day.
Oh my God.
And it was an account called To Write Love on Her Arms. And that is what really helped me before mental health was something that everyone was talking about. Before we even had a Facebook and things like that, was an account that a guy started to try to raise money for not even a close friend, but someone that he had met, to try to help get into rehab. And so
that's awesome.
He started selling t-shirts to raise money for that while she was trying to get sober. And Renee's story, and the story of that organization, which is now a massive organization that helps with suicide prevention and self-harm and depression, and just mental health in general, was started because of someone trying to help somebody else. And I mean, on their 10-year anniversary, that was my first tattoo, which is
that's
love
awesome,
on my left arm. And that's what one of the main, I think, social media pushes for awareness was writing love on your arm and posting that online, because the girl that it was started for had written some horrible things on her arm with harming herself on her arm. And so the idea of that is to cover that with love. And
That's really
so
cool.
that was my moment in learning that I wasn't alone and that things were hard, but there were other people that were struggling too and out there. So don't lose hope of that, and don't lose hope that, something like this can maybe help, and we're here and other people are here. So yeah, if you hear any of these things and you think you're maybe struggling of them, don't be afraid to reach out. And I know, Brandon, you just said, or reach out to you too.
Oh yeah,
So,
100%. 100%. Like I am not hard to find. Clashing Sabers on everything. Clashing Sabers Network at gmail.com. Like I am here. Absolutely. And like you said, like we might not have the answers. We might not know who. But sometimes just being there to listen is enough,
Yeah.
When I see my students, going through something, like I'll look at them and, do you want to talk about it or do you want me to leave you alone? And like just that alone, they kind of look at me like, are you serious? You're not going to force me to talk about it? If you want me to leave you alone, I'll leave you alone. But if you need to talk, I'm here. And sometimes they open up and sometimes they don't. And that's okay. Like sometimes people are ready to talk about it. Sometimes they aren't. But just know that when you are ready, people are there for you.
Yeah, definitely. And also know that it's okay if you don't say everything right, because I think sometimes when we're coming out of a hard time, we're not going to phrase or say or have the right tone or,
I'm going to say something wrong. Like just if you reach out to me, just expect I'm going to stumble over my words
or if you are reaching out to somebody, we understand that you're not going to say everything right.
100%.
Like,
yes.
Sometimes you have to rant and you're angry and you're frustrated, and that's how it is. And I think that's something that we can learn too from each other, is that sometimes we're not going to say everything right the first time. And I think that's one of the things that kind of stinks about social media, because it is kind of permanent and it is forever. I mean, you can delete things and that sort of thing, but like, yes, it is great to tell people to think before you speak, because I think that is important, and to take a breath. And if maybe there isn't something great to say, I know that's like an old saying, maybe don't say it. And yes, that is true. But at the same time, I think we also have to understand that we're all humans with human emotions, and we're all doing the best that we can. And sometimes we don't know what's going on behind the screen. And that person that seems like they're yelling about something or yelling at you, it might not even be whatever that is that's going on. It might be something under the surface. And I know I've had situations where I needed a lot of grace and understanding and patience when I was angry. And I'm trying to do the same to others, even though it can be hard sometimes.
Yeah, it's very hard sometimes.
Yeah. But so through that, you talked about, what your podcast, your email, and all of that. But tell people a little bit too about your podcast and about your foundation that you have too.
So Clashing Sabers is the best insight in the galaxy, is what we like to say. But really, it's a place where a bunch of us come together, share different ideas, look at Star Wars from different angles, usually disagree on just about everything to one degree or another, and walk away as friends. So we have 4 different shows actively running on the network right now. We just released an episode of Forever Star Wars, which was the first ever audio drama that we produced, that Marquis did all by himself, 100% self-produced, which was just fantastic. It's a great listen, so make sure you go over and check that out. And then on all of our socials, we're at Clashing Sabers if you want to see more stuff that we are doing. But our big thing is our nonprofit, which puts Star Wars books into classrooms across the country. So far, we've raised almost $10,000 and have been able to reach hundreds of kids with thousands of books. 100% of the proceeds that you donate over on our Patreon, patreon.com/Clashing Sabers, 100% of that goes directly to buying and shipping the books. And that means literally all I'm doing is paying to buy the book and paying to ship the book. I pay for the dang box if I have to. I pay for the bookmarks that go in it if I have, like 100% is books and shipping to get to the teachers. So if you know a teacher, if you are a teacher, if you can look up the teacher in the yellow pages that you still have from 1996, like go over to our website, classroomsavers.net. There's a little box at the top. Just click that, click nominate a teacher, and we'll get books into those kids' hands. So that's been, like I kind of mentioned earlier, like the coolest experience of this whole thing is that was not at all what I got into this for. And the opportunity presented itself, and we all looked at each other and we're like, this is the story that we get to tell now. And let's this is going to be hard, but exactly. It's going to be hard, but let's do it. Let's figure this out. And none of us knew what the heck we were doing. But we had the right people showing up for each other every day, and we're able to make that happen. So we're able to continue to make that happen because of, like I said, our patrons, people who donate to our fundraisers and stuff like that. So if you want more information on that, I know you're going to put some in the show notes, but also, you can reach out to me directly on any of those things, and I can provide you with some more information.
Well, awesome. Well, is there anything else that you kind of want to share that you hope people will take away from this and you sharing your story, or any last minute thoughts, I guess?
Just that you are enough. I think that's a big idea. Whatever your story is, it's enough. Whatever you've been through, it's enough. Whatever you're going through, it's enough. And whoever you are, it's enough.
That's very powerful. And I agree completely. It's a good reminder, especially when you struggle with any form of self-doubt.
Yeah.
To remember that and to know that, people love you, even if you don't think they do. And it could be random people on the internet that you become friends with.
Yep. And then you're traveling across the country to go hang out with them.
There you go. You never know.
You never know.
It can be this community, I love seeing this side of it stand up and represent itself and say, hey, wait, we're here.
Yeah, we are
we're here, and we genuinely support each other and want the best for each other and truly enjoy Star Wars. We don't have to like all of it, and we can have valid critiques of different things and be respectful of each other. That's not what I mean. I don't mean that we can't do that or want the best for the franchise, but at the end of the day, we love Star Wars, and we love each other. That's a part of this fandom together.
For sure.
Our found Star Wars family.
Found family. What a theme of Star Wars.
Yes. And through that, you can find hope.
Exactly. You're getting it, kid. You're figuring it out.
Yes, definitely. I love it. Oh, okay. So I am asking people fun questions at the end. And I know that you also, clearly, we've talked about her most of the time, love Ahsoka. And I've done this question in a different capacity with a lot of people, and it's probably one of my favorite ones because I love music. I know you like music too.
I am a big music fan.
We've talked about that outside of this. If Ahsoka had a song that she was listening to when she left the Jedi Order, what do you think would be on her playlist at that time?
First one that comes to my head is Dream On by Aerosmith. Because I think that's kind of a song about, continuing to push forward and dream for something bigger and better, even when people don't expect that of you. And Steven Tyler was kind of had that in his mind when he was writing that particular song. And then that was the song that kind of blew Aerosmith up into being who they became. So just for the meaning of the song and kind of how it parallels the story that we would see Ahsoka go on, Dream On by Aerosmith.
I think that's a great answer. It's an epic song, and that was an epic moment in Star Wars. So it fits.
Yes, exactly. We need like a fan cut. Somebody cut that together for me because I'm not going to do it.
I kind of tried to do it for the first episode I had with a guest, and it was like Kylo Ren, but he was like Ben Solo again, and he was going to save not save. That sounds bad, but he was going to be there for Rey and assist her.
He was going to assist Rey.
Yes, assist her in her destiny. And I tried to do it, and I think it turned out like okay. But oh my gosh, when I ask this question to people, if people with like someone that's good at that would edit that together and make a clip of it, oh my gosh, it would make my heart so happy.
Oh my God, that would be amazing. Send that to me.
I'm not gonna lie, there's sometimes that I'm driving, because that's when I listen to music the most. I hear a song and I'm like, this would be a good fan edit with like different clips of this character or different things like that.
I never thought about doing that. Now that's going to be a new game I play.
Oh, it's fun. It's really fun. And there's certain bands that now I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the band that this character would listen to when I like think about it. So new game, new fun game with music.
I love it. Love it.
Well, thank you, Brandon, so much for coming on and sharing not only your personal journey with Star Wars, but also mental health and how Star Wars has been there for you through that in the community as well. And also for sharing about your podcast and also the nonprofit that you started and that you're working with to help teachers and kids get Star Wars books, which I think is just absolutely incredible and such a great entry into this galaxy far, far away. I said it this past week. I would love to find somebody, and I know somebody like this exists already. But in the future, when I'm old and decrepit, because I'm already gray, I just cover it up.
What do you think the hat's for?
Yeah.
The hat's not because I'm having a great hair day.
But when I'm, old and decrepit, I'm working on the decrepit part. I'm trying to fight that, but it's difficult. I'm older than I look. If you have seen me and you might be listening to the audio and be like, what does this girl look like? She sounds like she's a 12-year-old chipmunk, but what is she? I also look like a 12-year-old, even though I'm not. Who knows? It could be one of these kids talking about how they read a Star Wars book, but I would love to find somebody who their entry point was a book or a comic, because most people's entry point has been a movie or something, or show, even, that sort of thing. But I know there's people out there that, randomly.
We're working on making more of them.
Yes, I love it. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for coming on this show. I
absolutely.
Really
Thanks for having me.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me today on Tales of the Force. Our stories of hope is the force of this fandom, and they are a powerful ally to each and every one of us. Life creates them, makes them grow. Their energy surrounds us and binds us together. Don't forget, luminous beings we all are, not this crude matter. May the Force be with you, always.